Welcome to the Gatekeeper podcast. I am your host, the Genie, and today it is just me right now. We might have some people join here in the next couple minutes, but yeah, if not, we have an interesting dialogue that or actually monologue until further notice, that we'll be talking about, and that is going to be the history of the gates. So, basically, we're just going to be going through, or I'm just going to be going through, talking about the different gates and the history of the meta, where it all started, and different things like this. You know, we tried to get Lucas in for the podcast. He can be here today. He's on school break, and things are happening. And Danny had some things going on. So I'll kind of be going over all of the different gates, but we will have these different people on that kind of talk about their strategies and their perspective on these gates in the future. But for now, I'll kind of just give the overview that I can give myself. So, with that being said, it all sort of started with Mrs. Cheek Edition. So, and let me pull up a picture of, let me see, downloads. Yeah, so let me pull up a picture of Mrs. Cheek Edition, or actually, what I'm about to show you is a screenshot of all of so it's kind of hard to tell from this picture, but if you look over here, this picture right in the middle, this is Mrs. Cheek Edition. So, we made a computerized version. Actually, Sawyer made a computerized version. And here is that. But none of that is going to do much. So, we'll actually take a look here at the version that Sawyer created, and then we'll kind of talk about where things. So, before Mrs. Cheek Edition, we've had the version we played at lunch, and the four gates were, there was stealth, there was attack, there was magic, and if I remember correctly, there was strength. And the gates were based on qualities, and you would roll the dice to see how much damage you do. So based on the type of character you were, and the type of qualities you had, and then what you rolled would determine how much damage you did. What I mean by that is if you were a stealth character and you rolled the stealth option on the roll, then you would do more damage because you rolled what you had. So originally the gates were all kind of based off that. And even going before this, and at this point I've lied twice saying that this is the beginning and this is the beginning. No. So even before this version, there was what we call Soul Thief, which I talk about in the documentary a little bit, but in the original version of Soul Thief, the goal of the game was to capture the soul, was to basically take over the soul of a person. And the gates represented these four different parts of the soul. And I remember it was wealth, love. It's so hard to remember going back. Let's see. I'm just kind of going through some notes here, some old pictures and things like that. But it doesn't look like I have a picture, but it was something along the lines of wealth and love, and there was two other qualities of the soul. So these original soul traits, these things that people go after, turned into these four fantasy things of strength, stealth, magic, and a fourth one probably being, I believe, being speed, and or actually no, it was long range. It was like archery. So with those four things, and then that and that's sort of where it was in the very beginning. Going from there, we made Mrs. Cheek Edition, which of course the goal of that game was to use magic to kill the Gatekeeper. So all of the gates took up some sort of magical property, and they kind of went from here to the next stage. So, for example, the Gate of Destruction was formed. So the Gate of Destruction, probably deriving from the Gate of Power and Strength. So you have that one, which is pretty obvious. It's about doing damage. Then you have the Gate of Illusion, which actually comes from the Gate of Magic. But when we say illusion magic, what we're talking about is we're talking about the ability to confuse. So originally, the Gate of Illusion was, the concept was that the Gatekeeper was becoming confused and then attacking. And they would do double damage, right? So it was like you roll and then it was double the amount of damage. So now the rules are completely changed, even in today's version of Mrs. Cheek. But the point is that the game or the Gate of Illusion was all about the gate using magic on the Gatekeeper to confuse them and have them basically attack themselves or you. But that really doesn't matter, the or you part. It was that 50-50 odd or even roll that Miss Cheek Edition had that we don't really use anymore. So then the other ones were Restoration, which we all know, gain health, lose health, or Gatekeeper gains health, you gain health. And then the last one was the Conjuration. So this is one that is not in the game anymore, Conjuration. But this would have derived... This would have been a sort of a replacement for maybe the Stealth Gate in the original version. Just as the Range Gate would have been a replacement for Restoration, or vice versa. So with the Gate of Conjuration, we invented what is called the Stockade. So originally, we have these things in the game called Stockade that block you from taking damage, and the way originally we used to call them gates, which was extremely confusing because you'd capture a gate, you rolled odd or even, and if you rolled odd, you get a gate, right? But it's like you're not getting a gate, you're getting a shield, and that shield eventually was renamed to a stockade, and the whole concept here was that you're conjuring a shield. So, and actually, originally, if you look at the original like artwork for this stuff, and let's see, I have to have some sort of picture of that on me somewhere. Unfortunately, I really just don't see anything in my repertoire. Oh, here we go. There we go, right here. So you can see the picture. The illusion, or no, which one are we talking about? Conjuration. There's a picture of a little rock monster, because originally the thought is that you're conjuring a rock monster to defend you. So that's kind of the thought. So stockade, eventually it turned into a stockade, and then eventually the stockade turned into what we call now, we call it a shield, but it's still officially in the game rules called a stockade. But or into a gate and then stockade then shield, but it's still called the stockade. So that's where that gate came from. And this was how the game was until we created the full version, which I'll pull up a picture here. We have let's see. Okay, and here's a painting of the second ever created Gatekeeper board. Okay, and I'll zoom in. So here we go. So this is when the history really begins here. We have blue, which is illusion, but now instead of illusion being a sort of a way to do damage and magic damage, it's now a way of turning the board, strategy, defense. So there's those elements to it, and then the Gate of Death, which is all about damage, but and I guess we'll have some interesting things to say about that. And then Restoration, of course, is restoration, gaining health, and red is destruction, but not destruction towards other players, but destruction towards the gates. So there's a lot of interesting sort of bits to sort of bring up here, and we'll kind of talk about it all. But like for example, in where the positioning of the gates are, and you can see there's a difference between the two versions. Green and black are across from each other, where on the second version they were right next to each other. And all of that is important, and all that matters. So there's a lot to sort of go into here. So we're going to start with the original version, and we'll just kind of talk about why the positioning matters and stuff like that. So in the original, you can see green and black are across from each other, blue and red are across from each other. The reason why this is important is because if you capture a gate, like for example, and I'll do it on this board here. So this is a Gatekeeper Excel that I'm showing you right now. So if I'm a yellow player, right, and I move on to the board right here, I have a path to red and I have a path to blue. And if I capture blue, then I have a path to go then attack red, or I can move over here and then attack red again. So I have two paths to block red. Now, say if another player, and let's say like, I don't know, let's this player right here, they capture red. So basically what we're looking at here is even if I block him on the left side, right here, he can't go through because I put a lane shield, then he can still go on the other side and attack my gate. And I don't know why I placed that there. That should be right there. So essentially what it means is that if you have a gate that is across from another gate, then it is easier to capture that gate than it is to capture, per se, the gate next to it. So let's say I had black. If I have black, okay, and I place this lane shield here, red is going to have a significantly harder time to capture black. There's no other path he has. I can immediately place this and stop them from going for it. And it's usually going to be more beneficial for them to just go for a gate that's not blocked. So there's certain characters and things ways to go around this, which we'll kind of talk about later. But I think the main thing to point out is that having two gates across from each other is kind of a big deal. So with the sort of early meta and strategy, you can see that red and blue were right across from each other, which is a big deal. Because when we talk about red and blue being right across each other, one thing comes to mind: the dynamo. Now, it might be kind of hard to see this character here on if you're watching the live stream, but the dynamo, and this is part of the specific card that we're looking at here, is part of the Gatekeeper Classic Edition, but it's derived from the original note card drawing that was used during competitive Gatekeeper Season 1. So, with that being said, the Dynamo had a red and blue bonus. So you can see how that has an advantage here if you say like, well, let's capture let's go ahead and, he goes in, he takes red. He has two paths to blue, which he has a bonus to. So it's like he has a huge advantage starting off. That's something that even now I would say a lot of players don't even take into account. If you pick a character that has that sort of advantage when looking at the board, there's a lot to that, and a lot of the best characters even have that advantage. So let me look at the Eldarian real quick. I don't know if this is true for this one. No, that one's not going to be relevant. I was saying that maybe the Eldarian had the same thing, but it doesn't. Anyway, so back in Season 1, we had that, and then let me look at the Genie too, because that was my card. Genie RNG. Okay, so the one thing that was very good about the blue is that blue gate, since you can turn the board, or you can swap the spawns around, as I'm doing here on this Gatekeeper Excel board, The blue board can capture blue, and then you can turn the board. So, for example, if the you can notice my spawns right here. I can go here. I can attack green, but say green places a lane shield right here. Okay, well then all I have to do is turn the board, and then you can see that goes right there. And now I have a path to green from this side. So that's kind of a bonus of green. So anyone with blue, this cross advantage isn't really even as relevant. But you can see with having the red first here, so you can say any character with blue has that advantage, and that's something that other characters, they have to be across to have a similar level advantage. So probably if you were to consider it, right, so like the worst combination you could have is probably black and red or green and red as far as gate bonuses go. But the problem is that both of those bonuses are very strong. Black and red being very strong early game to take the center, and green and red being very strong mid to late game taking the center. So it all sort of balances itself out. And it's crazy because when we made this stuff, the meta just kind of, we got lucky. The meta was just so happened to be balanced. But anyway, so if we look at the original cart or board here, I think the thing to mention is that blue and red were across from each other, and this led way to Ethan Miller, who, and I will show a picture of him real quick. The Ethan Miller was able to take advantage of this and really just dominate season 1. So it's not to say this is the only reason he dominated. There was sort of a discourse meta that we'll actually probably have a whole series on that, a whole episode on that. But that was certainly an advantage to Ethan, who chose the Dynamo as his character. So it really played into his favor, and I don't think there was really any other cards or players who had that distinct advantage to be just like this. So anyway, so there's the board, and then eventually we swapped it, right? And you can see why we would change this. So eventually then with the second board, we changed it to red and black. And obviously we changed it to red and black because, or actually no, this was probably a mistake. We didn't realize that this was a huge advantage back then to have the two gates across from each other. But with red and black across from each other, that's two super strong attacking gates right across from each other. And it's almost like it puts you at a huge disadvantage, especially with red giving you the attack bonus when attacking other gates with the 8-sided die. It's almost not fair because you're basically just going to get that gate for free. And if you have a bonus on black plus the 8-sided die, it's practically a guarantee. So, and once you have those two gates, like I said, it's that early game advantage where you can just go for center. And that's why like red and black are so good together. So it's just one of those things like you don't want to sort of give that up. Anyway, so that's kind of like what happened in the beginning. And so talking about strategies now. So let's get into the strategy of it. So like if you're a Dynamo, right, in season 1, and we say go in, you take red. Your strategy here is to then take the open path to blue, right, and then just basically go for center. Because at the time, end game strats were nowhere near as strong. Nobody knew how to. Nobody had pulled off a Dragon Roll. Nobody had pulled off a Magic 8. And we didn't even really know how to set those things up. So there was a lot in the game that was possible that we just didn't know how to find. We just hadn't found it yet. We didn't know how to get there. So anyway, this strategy of going red to blue and then taking center was one that was easy and not easily counterable. And of course, if black or green was open, a lot of times Ethan, he played for domination. He just, go for blue, then take green, black, whatever. As soon as he had a third gate, he's going for center no matter what. And I think that's part of like the original, and that kind of formed early meta. So back in the day, red, because of Ethan mainly, had been known to be such a powerful gate. And because of Ethan's success, because of the double damage bonus it has towards the center. So if you're in the center and you're defending, it's like, you don't have a ton of options, I suppose, would be the right way to say it, to prevent yourself from losing if you don't have red, because you're taking double damage from red, and then, black was a 12-sided dice, so if you didn't have red or black, like, green and blue, we didn't even know what to use these for. It was just like, well, we use these passively in gate phase, but ultimately we want red and black to take the center. And then having red and blue is just, you just prevented enough damage that you could survive. So that was kind of like the early days of red, and it made red very popular. But what that meant was if red was very popular, it meant that most of the people on the board wanted red. And if most people on the board wanted red, then it was the hardest one to keep, which means going for red, holding on to it, and then taking the center was something that was particularly challenging to do. And this is when the blue gate comes into play as a strategic bonus. And that's that the blue gate was so under attacked that people who played blue characters almost always had it. So that would be me. So like the genie, when you took blue, number one, you have control of the board. You have the most options strategically. But there was not really a way that you could take center. So still just kind of focusing on red strike. We'll get into blue in a second. But the point is that having a lot of people go for your gate made it hard to hold on to. So with that being said about red, it took a long time to have a player, and so this is really early on season 1. It took a long time before a player could really hold on to the center. And enter scene the Gringo Giant. So this is when Lucas comes on the scene. When Lucas came on the scene, capturing red was something that he did, and he was really good at holding on to it. And I think if you look at his bonuses, his third bonus is all gates -1 or 2 HP. His ability to add health to his gate really helped him to hold on to the gate. But then on top of that, there was just an added level of strategy and like a sort of skill of where you place your lane shields. Do you place your lane shield? So like, for example, Ethan's going to be right here on 1 here. He's going to be there. You're going to have to block him with a lane shield. So it's kind of one of those things. And back then, and this is something that I think we didn't really do this on purpose, but and maybe some people did. But this strategy sort of arose. So you would place a lane shield here, and then you would move your pawn out here, right? So then you're blocking 2 paths to your gate. So then when they say, like, if this player right here wanted to hop on, if he wanted to hop on an attack, he has to battle to get in this position. And then, of course, with the original rule set, he's just going to go back to his gate. So you're going to have to battle him twice just to take the gate. So it was quite advantageous to... It was quite a different... It took a lot of strategy to hold the meta, but to hold red. But Lucas was able to do it, and I think the other thing that helped him take it was that the two strongest red players was Ethan and Lucas, both of which, we can see their cards here. We have the Dynamo and the Gringo Giant. And with Ethan losing out to taking red early game, and he then would have to go for blue, but he couldn't really go for blue because in season 3, which is when this all started taking place, the genie, who is me, really started to dominate blue a lot. And again, we'll go into blue strategy later. But if I have blue and Lucas has red, then Ethan was kind of put on the sidelines. And to be honest, there wasn't going to be much for him to do until he figured out a way to take red from Lucas. And honestly, the games probably just didn't last long enough. I don't know exactly what Ethan's stats are as far as deaths were in season 3. I could probably pull them up, but Ethan, he essentially didn't have the longevity that the Gringo Giant did. So we by season 3, we were pulling off, like, if you had less than 10 health, you were dead. People had multiple strategies up their sleeves to take you out. And when you having that health bonus that the Gringo Giant has was a huge advantage to staying alive. So all of that went into Lucas staying alive, dominating red, and Ethan kind of being put on the fences, not having a real way of staying alive. So with that said, that's about as far as... Oh, sorry, actually, no. So with that being said, so now we have someone who's able to hold on to red. But then what is the next step? So to sort of talk about where the red meta went from here, we have to talk about where the green meta started. So Andrew talked a lot about his strategies on green. So we don't have... Last week, or 2 weeks ago, actually. So we don't have to talk too much about it. But in the very beginning, we would go to Papa Slood's house, and Papa Slood at the time, which I think I have a picture of him too right here. Papa Slood, he was the only adult who played Gatekeeper. He would go for green, and he would actually play the rah-rah. So let's see here. Let's see what we got here as far as the rah-rah. Right here. Okay, so the rah-rah, he'd go in and he'd take green. What he would do and he basically invented this. But whoever took red, which at the time would be Ethan, he would, as soon as Ethan would take the center, Rah-Rah or Papa Slood would hit the 30 health jackpot, go down, and which would send him back to 20, and he'd take a gate. And then from there, he would just take red from him. So then he would have both gates. And then, of course, he would just attack him with a double damage on the 8-sided die. And then you can see right there, he would roll the 8. So then it's like he could kill... He would kill Ethan. So right there, even just with what I just showed, with rolling the 8 on the D8, he'd take Ethan out and put him at the side. Now, the thing was with Papa Slood is he didn't play that much because, like I said, he's an adult. He had a lot of responsibilities. So it wasn't something that happened all the time. But that, just because it didn't happen all the time didn't mean that he didn't invent it. So years later, with Drew Moreno on the Paladin, so let's see, Paladin card right here, he'd go in and do the same thing, except he didn't have... What he would do is he would get to 20 health, and then he'd go for a kill. And the only problem is that getting a kill wasn't consistent. But when he did get the kill, so let's say he killed the genie, he'd kill the genie, and then he would hit the 10 health, he'd go to 30, jackpot, take red, do the same thing. So that was his strategy. Now, Andrew Moreno, I would say, like I said, his plan of getting a kill to do this wasn't as strong. And although it did work, Lucas very quickly adapted and just would wait. He would just wait until someone else took Gatekeeper. So what would happen is he would wait, and then he wouldn't take center, and then Andrew would basically be forced into taking the center from the jackpot, in which Lucas would just kill him. So if it basically kind of went like that, it's like, it basically went like this. If I summed it up really shortly, is red was very strong, and then we found a strategy with green where we would take the center after red had already taken it, but we would jackpot after red had taken the center, and then use it to take red from them. And so then green to red would be the stronger strat. But then, as I said, Lucas figured take red, lower the center, or force or keep attacking the green lane shield. Because here's the thing. If you just attack the green lane shield here, so like if green puts the lane shield up, you get dragons, and they have to gain 2 health. You can see the lane shield gain 2 health when the green lane shield is destroyed. So they're basically, and they have to block you because you have that 8-sided die. So you're basically just forcing them to take health. They take the center, and then you kill them because you have the strongest gate. You're the one rolling double damage. By the time it goes around to you, you get to finish the blow 9 times out of 10. Then you take green, and then you take the center. So, and then you take the center, and then you only have to survive 2, and you have red and green. And if you have red and green, you can't be jackpotted on. So it's a really brilliant strategy from Lucas to sort of solidify red as the best gate, even after we had found a clear counter to it. Mainly being because Drew Moreno just wasn't skilled enough to pull it off consistently, and Lucas took advantage of that. So he forced him in the center, and whatever. So that was red up into season 3. It started off pretty simple, but ended up with this sort of forcing green to take center and then winning. And you can even in the last grand finals, Lucas actually tried to do this to Andrew, which which I can talk about what Andrew did. So what Andrew did with green, and so this is progressing the meta way farther because now we're talking about the end of season 4. So by the end of season 4, Andrew had figured out, okay, if he forces me to take center, I'm going to use the dragons being like the, and let's actually show this off. So with Andrew, let's put Andrew at the Eldarian. He takes center. He gets the blue or the black dragon. So he gets the black dragon, which gives him the stockade. He turns it in, gets the stockade, so gets a shield, and then when he hits 30, he's forced into the center, but he's got a shield. So then when he jackpots, then when red tries to kill him, he can't. He's got a shield, which blocks a bunch of damage. Okay, so then that's just how that happens. So he blocks damage, and then he actually survives the first rotation. So then he blocks black or red, and then he attacks whoever has the lowest health. So this is the way he countered it. If he kills somebody, you gain 10 health. That's what happened. So what Andrew did was whoever had the lowest health, so let's say like the genie has 5 health. He goes in for the battle here. He puts this lane shield up to block Lucas. He then battles me for the blue gate, and since I only have 5 health, it's very likely he kills me. And when he does kill me, although his health will be lower, probably, I don't know, let's see, if I wrote 6, 6, and a 12, see, it's possible he dies, but more than likely you're rolling like a 7, a 3, and a 4, and you got like 5 health left, 6 health left. 4 health left, somewhere around there. And then once you get that kill, then you're all the way back up to 15, right? And then you get that gate too. And then depending on the gate, you get bonuses. So then he'd be out of the picture, and then he'd have 2 gates. So all in all, and let me see here. Let's see, yeah. So then all of a sudden he has 2 gates, and then he's got 1 blocked, and all he's got to worry about is black. So this is kind of like, so this is what Andrew did with the green gate, and it was very successful, and no one was really able, up until today, has ever been able to like hard counter that. We just have, I mean, truthfully, season 5 hasn't been going on long enough for us to find a true answer to this strategy completely. So, with that being said, you kind of have a full picture of the green gate's history. With the red gate, going back to red, the meta has not been pushed further. Tori, who is a player, and he played the Twins last season, so Fungal Sport 34, he'd go on the stage, he'd take red, and let me move this back over here. He'd take red, and then he would go for domination. So he would take red, he would take blue, and then eventually black, and try to get green. He tried to get them all, and that's how he would try to win. So it was he played a much slower game, but that never correlated to wins. To be honest, he played a little bit slow. Not that I never correlated this to wins. It was just something that truthfully wasn't as effective, if I'm being honest, in the long term. So I think it's just, but unfortunately that's just where the red gate is today, and we haven't moved past that. I'm certain that there's ways. I know that the slice has come back. So back in the early days of Gatekeeper, people would try to take Gatekeeper in like a turn or two. So for example, if it's the first turn of the game and you take red and then you lower the center, which starts at a 10 down to 6, then on the next turn you roll your 8-sided die to take it out. If one of these gates aren't captured, then you can take center. Okay, you're only being attacked by 2 gates. So let's say like blue wasn't captured. You're only being attacked by blue, red, and green. Green, it's not late enough in the game for them to jackpot. And black, although it will do damage to you, you're just going to block it on your next turn. With a green lane shield. So you're only going to get, and then so by your second turn, you could potentially, if you destroy green, or destroy the other gate that you don't own, then you could have no gates that are attacking you. You could have them all blocked off or owned, and then win the game. So that's called a slice. That was something that's been experimented with in New York a little bit. Again, I actually almost did it myself last week, which was pretty cool. But it didn't end up. Even then, I made a mistake. It didn't happen. It's kind of something that we all know works, but something always gets in the way of making it work. It's definitely there's a bit of odds and luck to even have the opportunity to do it, let alone the intuition to take advantage of it. So, red started out as the best. This was just quick summary here. Red started out as the best with the Dynamo card, going from red to blue, taking center, having that huge double damage made it a very obvious choice to go for. This causing so many people to all go for red all the time made red harder to hold on to, which over the course of Season 2 sort of made it less of a legitimate target, and then eventually pushed us into a place of where Lucas, we pushed into this place where we needed someone to figure out how to hold on to it. And that is where Lucas comes into play, where we had played long enough to sort of have a well thought out strategy as far as pawn placement and shields go. And then, of course, after being countered by the green gate, then of course he had discovered the sort of slower playing red gate, or the slow game with the red gate, where instead of going for an early game victory, you're going for a mid game victory, and from there, after Andrew's the green gate development to the place of the stockade meta, being able to survive literally as for the first Gatekeeper with just the green gate, then we came to a place where red is not really in the meta as far as for characters. People don't really pick red characters right now. It's kind of hard to solidify a victory when you're relying on high rolls and sort of lucky situations where you don't have a lot of control over those situations. So I definitely feel like red has its place, and it'll probably make a huge comeback. I think if someone had spent enough time theory crafting, red would probably be the best gate. But as of right now, it's just something where we're like, okay, we're trying to either look for that early victory or we're just going for domination. Because if we don't have domination, or if we don't have at least 3 gates, then it seems like there's a lot of ways to counter it. And that kind of brings us, and with that we've kind of covered red and green, and that kind of brings me to the blue gate, which I have always loved the blue gate, and I've always believed that the blue gate is actually the best gate. So let me talk about what I mean by that. So the blue gate has the ability to turn the board, and it has something that it's underestimated, and not a lot of people go for it. So if you can hold blue gate every turn, you can basically choose who gets what gate. So what do I mean by that? So let's say I'm the genie. Okay, I'm down here. I'm gonna put my pawn down there. It's right here. And then let's see. Orange is right here. He's attacking red. Yellow is attacking red. Okay. And then green is on their spawn. So I can turn the board so that... hold on. I turned it the wrong way. I think I also turned it the wrong way. I can turn the board. Am I crazy here? There we go. I can turn the board and force green to attack red. I can put them in a situation where they're behind the yellow player here. And I can kind of, let's say, like right now white owns it. So I can make him, so I have a situation here where you have 2 players attacking. I have him attacking, then maybe someone turns the board so that I basically do this. I can basically just make it so people always have a path to this gate, and it's always being swapped hands. Well, all this action's happening on this side of the board. Me on this side of the board, I'm just completely safe, placing my lane shields, blocking people from even trying to go for my gate, and red is just taking more and more damage. The other thing is that anytime there's a situation where a gate is it's unluckily been removed, then I can't, or lowered, for example. Let's say so you have a green lane shield right here. I can't really go through it. Okay, so I'm gonna move back to my spawn. Okay, which you can see my pawn start here, and then I'm gonna move here. Okay, so then I can move my character right here, and I can attack green. So that having that advantage means that anytime a gate is low, I can basically just take it. So any misplays from other players is very easy for me to take advantage of and take that gate. So then, what about the center? Well, we'll have to get to that in a second. But early on, the thing with me having blue was that I was able to just stay in the game, not lose my gate, and basically lower the odds of other people having consistent wins. While I'm here on the board the whole game, whoever has red, which at the time was the strongest gate in Season 1, was up in the air. Now, going forward, the thing with blue that really in early Season 1 helped was the fact that you could go for dragon rolls. So let's say I could, for example, go for this lane shield. I could go for, I could hop off, okay, and then I could go for this lane shield up here, the red one. And you basically have option to go for any lane shield. Well, what that does is it allows you to quickly build up dragons. So that was a large reason of why I was the first player to hit a dragon roll, like a real dragon roll, and hit the real dragon's curse. And it's a reason why originally I was kind of goated with dragons. So or at least I was the first person that really push the dragon meta. There wasn't really a good way in Season 1, even Season 2, to win with the blue gate. But what you did by staying alive long and forcing the game to go longer, and that's really the key, is you allowed yourself to build up this dragon advantage and then use a dragon roll. So for the sake of it, I'll look at the dragon roll card right here. So you'd look at this dragon roll card if it comes up. I don't know if it will. Let's see. Dragon roll. Interesting. That's not coming up. Okay. Well, anyway, see the dragon roll card at the time was just this super strong roll that would allow you to capture a gate, become Gatekeeper, did all kinds of powerful things. So back in the day, having that sort of advantage in the end game of a dragon roll would really put you in a winning position. So the strategy kind of went like this. Use the turn bonus to make the game go late. Then, by causing people to trade gates a lot while stocking up your defense. Then, grab enough dragons that you can do a dragon roll. Then, go for the dragon roll once the game is in late game. So this could be the second Gatekeeper, the third Gatekeeper rotation sort of situation. Or it could even just be when you have a slight advantage, maybe you capture another gate. So I have black and blue. Then I use a dragon roll. I either immediately get center, or I get a third gate, or I gain a bunch of health and jackpot. Whatever the situation is, I can use that to push my advantage into a winning position. And that was really strong. So that was that. And to be honest, so I would do something that I coined the lazy Susan. So I would have 3 dragons, and I'd get a 4th dragon and turn one in. And then I'd get a 4th dragon and then turn one in. Every turn I get a 4th dragon, turn one in, turn one in, get a dragon, turn one in. So I'm using bonuses every turn. So then you can imagine if I'm let's see here, like if I'm gonna conjuring a stockade, I do a conjure stockade. Okay, well I'm getting a shield, then I'm turning in the shield dragon, and then I'm getting a 3rd dragon. Right? So then I'm getting 2 shields in a turn. Or I'm doing the no penalty element tower, so then I'm rolling for red, dealing damage, turning my red dragon in. Okay? And then doing another 3 damage. I'm doing 6 damage. And then I had this advantage, and then after I did that, I could do a dragon roll. So I had a huge advantage in play with the dragons, and it was very beneficial. And it's how that was my early Season 1 strategy, just to make the game last a long time, and then basically just dragon roll
And sometimes that meant I was dragon rolling for a clutch. I had to roll a certain number, and of course I got lucky in some of those games in season one. But uh, ultimately, the strategy was something that worked consistently enough, so it was pretty sweet. But I think when it came down to say Lucas's game, I couldn't. I didn't have I would say like with because this is what Lucas did if you remember. Lucas taking red, putting a lane shield, blocking one. If he survived the turn, if I say orange attacks him, if he survived the turn, places the lane shield, at that point he only has one weakness, and I at that point was starting to lose my grip per se, especially if he captured that second gate. Because if he had green, then he could really camp out because then he had both these gates, and it's like, well, what do? He's got both gates, all the sides are blocked off, it's not, there's no way to take him out. So I lost some of that control to make the game go into late game. And the other thing that happened was, and we'll kind of go into this more, is the kill meta. And this will kind of have to, we'll talk about Blackgate, but the point is like, I couldn't survive long enough. I lost some of the ability to control the board. There were reasons why my strategy here, late game into Lazy Susan Dragons, into Dragon Roll, to give myself advantage at the end, wasn't going to cut it in season 3. And it didn't. And in fact, I really had to theory craft on some ways I could win. So in season 3, we created, or we theorized, a strategy that is basically this. You take green or blue, you get 4 stockades, or 3 at least, and you take the center. The 3 shields block blue, red, and black's attack. You survive 1 rotation. You block red with the green lane shield, and then you attack black. Okay. And if you get black, then you're only dealing with green. Okay. And this was huge, because even if green jackpotted and they take blue, it's not a big deal because then they can only attack from one or the other. They attack from black. There's just some holes here that it's like, okay, so they jackpot, they take black. It's not my gate, so I'm not losing a gate. So there's really, and like I said, even if they jackpot and take red, I got a stockade to block it. The thing is that this never actually happened. We never actually did this. It was just a theory. And among all these theories that we were coming up with, or I was coming up with, we never actually, managed to last a long time. And I was really just testing out strategies. So I would take center early with different gate setups, or maybe multiple shield, or whatever the deal is, and then I would just try to survive. Also, another thing, if you had multiple dragons, that would prevent people from dragon rolling on you. So, in season 3, this was the state of blue. It was a theory. We didn't really have much to go by. We just knew that blue could be good if we could figure out a way to consistently get those stockades. Now, going forward in the season 4, that is exactly what started to happen. The blue gate got a buff where if you destroyed its lane shields, you would get stockades, which certainly helped. We also started playing with mana cards. So instead of this genie, I would play with the other genie, which has the mana cards, and you could literally just conjure a stockade. So once you could do this, then as blue character, you're already getting one or two stockades right off the bat. So then you could just use your mana to get the next 4 to take center, and then you just have those 4 stockades and you could win as the first Gatekeeper. Now the problem with this strategy was mid-game you didn't have a great way of taking the center. And a lot, since you're doing so much more to focus on getting stockades, you don't have the dragons that you would have in Season 1. So your mid-game and late game, or your late game at the very least, was suffering quite a bit. Your early game was getting way stronger, and your mid game was getting stronger, but you had the mid game, I would say there was just a lot of competition. But this started working, so you can even see if you look at the stats of Season 1, that, or Season 3 to Season 4, that my average rotation survived in the center went up a ton from Season 3 to Season 4. And actually, I'll actually bring that up, because why not? So, let me see here. Let's see. Okay, boom, right here. So you can see me. Average rotation survive right here. So from Season 3.7 average rotation survive to Season 4, 2.29. And then we've progressed this even farther to 2.5. So where is Blue Gate today then? So Season 4, that's where it was. Where is the Blue Gate today in Season 5? In Season 4. In Season 5. So with the sort of concept proving that was happening in Season 4. In Season 5, we really just sort of solidified that and really taken it to the next level. But it's not anything way different. I think once you got to Season 5, a lot of gate strategies with blue I think there's a lot to learn with, like, board turns, going back to Season 1's, like, board turns to force games to go longer and different things like that. There's a lot there that can be used. But the problem is just this whole notion of there's just a lot to think about. So going forward, I'm not really entirely sure where Blue Gate will go. I think Blue Gate still is the best. You have the ability to control the board. You have the shield advantage. You can take gates anytime they're in a bad place. You never are stuck. There's so many good things about blue, except for raw power. So I think ultimately blue is right now considered probably one of the better gates. Let me look at Season 5 national stats. Looks like there's not too much to say about it. It looks like right now all the stats are pretty evened out. If you go to Season 4, I mean, I really was the only Blue Gate player in Season 4 in the top 10 other than Brandon Rempus. So with that being said, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say where. I mean, there was in the top 10 there was 4 red players, and there was 2 green players, 2 blue players, 2 multiplayers, no black players in the top 10. So it's hard to say what the future is. I think overall, the Blue Gate is a hard gate to use, and that's just something that you have to accept when being a Blue Gate player. Your gate is challenging, but these strategies with the stockades are definitely something, like, not anything to be sneezed at. So I think it's exciting where it's going. Now, the last gate I think we could talk about. Oh, actually, and one more thing too. There is a way to counter these stockades, and that's to poison. You just poison the person with blue. And that was actually something that I think once we figured out in Season 3 that the Blue Gate could do that, it was kind of pretty typical to just poison whoever has blue right off the bat. So we kind of countered it before we even got a chance not to. And part of why we were able to stop that from happening, or I was in season 4, is because I just would grab that, use the blue ability to, the turn and board ability to grab a dragon real quick. And I would just poison someone else with the poison dragon and get the poison off me. So it didn't take a long time. It took a while, but eventually I found a good rhythm or move steps to sort of get that shield off me. And back then, I wouldn't even survive till endgame because I'd be dying. So season 3 was certainly very competitive and hard to compete. But in season 4, now season 5, I think the Blue Gate has definitely, in the right hands, has that sort of strength that you need to win the game. So anyway, going down to black. So black is interesting. And I wanted to have Danny on to talk about this because Danny is the best Blackgate player historically, and also Gabe, but they don't have the results to really show it off. So what am I trying to say here? So like Wolverine has a black bonus, and Redeemer has a black bonus. It's the second bonus here. But both of these are kind of a big deal. So let's we kind of talked about this in the podcast a little bit, so we'll kind of touch upon this. So first of all, season 2 Wolverine, this was Gabe's shining moment. So season 1, black wasn't really that strong. And the reason why was because red was just the stronger gate, and you could go for black, but you're just going to be beat by whoever has red. By season 2, that had shifted because red gate was so overtaken all the time. It was so heavily contested that the black gate became pretty much the best option. So this is enter scene Gabe Frayne. Gabe Frayne playing the Wolverine with a black bonus would take black, and then all of a sudden nobody's contesting him because they're contesting for red, and then he could just go for the gates freely, try to capture other gates, whatever. Get the 1-2 combo, get 2 gates at a time, while everyone's contesting the other gate, red. So everyone's contesting red. He gets red and black and blue, black and green, and he just takes the center. And then from there, he just wins. It's not the most consistent strategy, but in season 2, him and Danny were both going for this, essentially. And that led up to them, if my understanding is correct, let's look at season 2. Yeah, being the top 2 players. So it's not necessarily, so to a certain extent it's happenstance, but it's like this is what it was. Black became, once red was heavily contested, black truly was the best gate, and you had these 2 players rise to the top using it. And I believe Danny, one of them won. He was Gabe was top ranked in the season, in the league, and Danny won the finals. So with all that being said, that's where black was season 2. Season 1, it kind of wasn't really talked about. It wasn't really something that anybody really knew about. Again, we'll get Danny's perspective on this next week, hopefully. But by season 2, it really kind of took its place as the gate. Now, it was still under the radar, and I don't think anyone really realized this in season 2, like why these players were winning. But ultimately, that's what it was after analysis and looking at what's going on. So anyway, so this is where we're at.
Black is a strong gate. Danny and Gabe are winning. But where does it go from there? And I think where it goes from there is season 3. And so season 3 is when kills became really strong. So let's say take Danny, for example. Danny was really good about getting a lane shield right off the bat and holding on to the red dragon. And he would basically hold on to that until he could kill someone. So for example, his number 1 bonus was deal 3 damage to target player. So if he rolled a 1 and then you had and he had the red dragon, you're dead. That's 6 damage to you. You know what I mean? If you're under 10. Because he would go for the tower, use the dragon, use his bonus on you. So there was a lot. There was a lot of tension there. So what with the kills being with players being more skilled at getting kills in season 3, any extra damage that could be done was really quite significant. So back then the black bonus was to battle players. So now it's actually you just deal damage to them. But now back then it was battle players and you got a bigger dice than them. So you got a D8 versus a D6. So you were most of the time dealing an extra 2 damage to people if you battled them. So this is essentially what would happen. People would do these combos with the dragons, like Danny. He'd hold on to the dragon. He'd turn it in. He'd use the tower. And then he'd go and fight you on your spawn. Like, for example, if let's say white's right here, and yellow comes up to the spawn. They battle. He does that extra 2 damage to him. Of course, there's some luck to it, but a lot of times it just worked out that way most of the time. Because he had the bigger die, and then he would do like 8 to 10 damage, right? 7 to 10 damage. And then he could even do more than that, because he could technically do 7 damage to you in the battle. So, what is that? So that's like 6 plus 7. Yeah, it's like 13 damage. You do up to 13 damage to you in a turn, give or take. So, with that being said, people... The Black Gate was really being used to kill people or push people to their death. Now the other thing, we talked about this in the last podcast, or with the podcast with Andrew when he was talking about his. The other thing that was happening is with the same advantages that the Black Gate had in season 2, being that it wasn't as contested as red, but it was still very strong. What would happen is Danny would disrupt the meta. In other words, let's say Danny has black or Gabe has black, and he's holding onto the dragon. He deals some damage to someone, and he sets him up for a kill. Okay, well, they set him up for the kill. Someone kills them. They hit 30 health. They take red, not his gate, because his gate's not as strong as red. Now, the person with green and now one person has green and red, and one person has blue, and then someone takes center or they lower center, and since the black player is under the radar, they can take advantage of the chaos and just go for center, right? And so like let's say someone takes blue, green, and red. They use blue to get green. They jackpot, take red. They go for blue. Now they're going for the center. They take center, and then you can just take center as black, or you're just the player who's second most often likely going to kill the person who is Gatekeeper when that person has low health, because you do up to 12 damage. So Blackgate basically just already being sort of a runner up, while red was in season 3 still the best, black was sort of just a runner up, good all around gate that was going to win you a lot of games. But now it had the advantage of getting you kills, which could help you jackpot, and that really helped Blackgate, at least in season 3, with end game scenarios, being that they could jackpot
and then take a gate and attack center. So it really was quite a big deal. That black gate had this ability that we pushed it in this way. Well, the other part of it was that since you had a better chance of winning battles, it also meant you had a better chance of taking gates, which is actually a huge advantage, because if a gate was low and you had a path to it, you're pretty much most likely going to get it, which is different than red, because red could have the advantage on the battle, but they still have that 50-50. But I say blue gates at, so let's say, like, for example, white has red, white goes for blue, they go for, now they have to battle for it. So like, let's look at it like this. So red is at, blue gate's at 1 health, okay? So the red player, he takes it, but he still has to battle. He still has to battle for the gate. Whereas, and that's a 50-50. Whereas the player with black has more than a 50-50 at the same gate. So he had actually, although the red gate was better for destroying gates, black was actually kind of better for taking gates in a lot of situations. So that was very helpful. So black had a lot of bonuses here that I think not a lot of players had really considered. And I think that with this added kill potential, it really started to take off. So now that was Season 3. And in Season 3, we know that no black players really performed super great. Obviously, Danny was the best one, and he was ranked 10, but he was still technically a red-focused player. And you can see Gabe was ranked 11 right behind him. Or actually, let me look at Season 3 here. Season 3. Yeah, so Season 4, right, you can see Danny was in the second half of the season. Let's see, Danny was ranked 3. Actually, so no. So in Season 3, Danny and Gabe were both ranked 4 and 5, or 3 and 5, going after the black gate. And this was definitely a strong advantage for them. Definitely a huge advantage. So yes, I mean, but and that's pretty much where it ended. You know, that's probably at the end of the line in thoughts. I don't really know. This is why we'll get Danny to hear more of his thoughts on it. But that's kind of where my thoughts in like line of thinking ends. Going forward, going forward into Season 4. In Season 4, we had a character called the Wolverine. Wolverine, which we already have Wolverine RNG, but this Wolverine has, you can't see it that well in this stream, but they have an ability called the Mangler. The Mangler does double damage, and now it's worth 4 mana, but it was only 2. The Mangler doubles damage. So if you have the black gate, instead of battling players, just does 2 damage to people every turn. So essentially, you could deal 4 damage to someone every other turn with this character. And if you had the red dragon, then you could do up to 10 damage, because you're doubling the red dragon, you're doubling the 2 damage. It was a lot of damage. And in fact, this character pretty much, out of morality, for the sake of fairness of the game, people just didn't play it. Now the card's fair. You got the 4 mana, but ultimately it's not really going to be. It's still extremely strong, and I think it's just something that we all know is there. We know all the advantages that Blackgate used to have. But with this change, it's not as good at getting taking gates, but it's so good at getting kills. And with characters like the Wolverine, you can do so much damage to people. The truth is just how well are people able to set up for those advantages? How good are people able to... I'm sorry. So how well can people set up for those advantages? How people can are people able to prevent players who have those advantages from getting them, and then just the forethought of who you're going for. So for example, like it doesn't really do good to kill someone who doesn't have anything, but if you kill someone who has a bunch of gates, so like say a player like say purple is blue right here. If you kill him, you get blue, so you have 2 gates. So there's kind of 2 ways to play black in Season 4 and Season 5. The first way being that you go for a kill on someone who has a bunch of other gates, or a couple other gates, and that being a way of capturing multiple gates at the same time and then winning the game. The other way to go about it is to win by elimination. In other words, you just kill all the other players, and you don't make any sort of move for the center at all. You just try to keep the center at 10. And you just try to try to keep people from taking sort of any advantage of going for the center. And you kind of plan your attacks on, well, which player wants to go for the center now? And you kill him first, then you kill the next one, then you kill the next one. So that's just the way the black gate players play now. The other way, so that's the 2 ways. So aside from those 2 ways, I don't know where the black gate is going to go. I think the black gate strategy, I think there's still honestly a lot to be uncovered with all of these gates. I think red. I think as far as long as we're getting new characters and stuff, I think figuring out ways that we can use the abilities of characters with the gates to win or to kill or to do things. There's a lot of things we can sort of work on here, but it's not. There's not like one. It's gonna take a lot of time and play. So these are good. This is a good subject to sort of revisit at the end of the season and kind of see where things have gone. But as of right now, that's sort of the gist of where all the gates have been, where they all were, and how they came to today. Now I can start a prediction. I'll just give a prediction. So I predict red. I still think red is the best gate, and I think that red will take its spot. I also think that there will be players who really reinvent the wheel at black and just figure out ways to get some seriously good kills. But ultimately, so maybe I spoke too quick on red being the best gate. I think that blue gate has the farthest to go. I think the theory crafting on board turns, on lane shield placement, on how you use dragons and stuff like that, I think blue has a lot there. They have, for example, they can use the stockades for mid game. They can use the dragons for end game victories. I think there's theories that are in the works that could help players have early game victories. So, it's pretty hard to figure out what it's going to be, but I think blue has I think a perfect Gatekeeper player, like if you made no mistakes and you had perfect calculations, I think blue is the best for winning consistently. I think red, yeah, and I think as of right now, green is the strongest gate because of Andrew's development of strategies, and who knows, maybe those strategies will sort of develop even farther. You know, there's a lot you can use the dragons in congruency with any other gates. So anyway, yeah, I don't have any much else to say. Unfortunately, no one else was able to join me for today's Gatekeeper. So hope that if anyone made it this far, that they enjoyed just hearing me talk about the different gate strategies. But next week, I think we're gonna talk about we're probably gonna get that interview with Danny and maybe even Lucas. So maybe we expand upon this topic a little bit more. We'll just kind of talk about the community a little bit. But anyway, I want to thank anyone for listening. And yeah, it's been a great stream. So yeah,